friendly neighborly manner 24/7, 365 or 366 days a year here on YouTube, and also on X and Instagram and Facebook, where my social media handles will be available later. And we are now on TikTok. We just launched our TikTok yesterday, made a couple of videos there. Really excited about some of the stuff we're doing there. So we have short form content dropping every day here on YouTube and on TikTok, and other stuff on X and Instagram and Facebook. We will be going live again on Instagram, on X last night, as we did last night, next Friday at 7 Eastern. I figured out how to do the chat there, so we will continue our Q&As, which we have every Friday and Saturday at 6 here at 7 o'clock on Friday night on X next week. And we'll be streaming on Instagram and probably on TikTok at some point. So hopefully you guys come and check that out. But this is indeed the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. And if you like history and social studies, consider liking and subscribing and helping the channel grow. And go and vote on the poll we have on the channel for our live stream like and what topic I will be discussing and covering with you guys tomorrow. That'll be 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be discussing the June holidays a little bit, but I also will be talking about whatever you guys voted on. So by midnight tonight, Eastern Standard Time, I will be looking at the poll, seeing the results, and deciding on the two topics on the second topic. So we've got the first topic is June holidays, like Juneteenth, Pride Month, Father's Day, stuff like that. And then I will also be discussing a secondary topic, so make sure to go vote on that. And yes, we are live streaming here every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our Q&A. We have a 7 p.m. Q&A, Ask Me Anything on X, that we will be relaunching next Friday, and we figured out exactly how that is. And next Friday is 4th of July, so maybe we'll do it next Saturday. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But you can vote on my YouTube channel, George. But yeah, and then so we have Friday, Saturday, Q&A, Ask Me Anything, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then Sundays, 4 p.m. Eastern is our live stream lecture. And this Friday's topic, and then Mondays and Fridays, we have long-form videos that drop at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we have shorts every day here on Instagram and on X, so go follow us on Instagram and X. And Solomon, a very early happy birthday to you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And George, good to see you as well. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. For the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like, as I do every Friday and Saturday here on YouTube at 6 p.m. Eastern. We did a little bit of that on Instagram. That was a lot of fun. And then on Friday, and then on Fridays, we're going to start doing an hour on X of Q&A, and I figured out how to do the chat, so I'm really looking forward to that. Latte, hello. The Tree, always the Tree, Bloodhound. And Bryce, hello. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. If you guys like social studies and the like, or the vibes we have here, or you have questions or topics you want answered, like and subscribe. That's how you can become a friendly neighborhood historian, and then drop a topic or a question that you have, and I will answer it in a timely manner. So, who was the last king in America? Well, America doesn't have kings. I guess you could say George III, technically, the British king. I'm sorry about leaving the child for the family vacation. What happened to the smoking jacket? Usually I wear a Hugh Hefner style smoking jacket as my attire, but it's just getting too dang hot in the summer. There's a big heat wave in the United States right now, so I'm just going kind of more casual, no long, heavy sleeves and all of that. Let me see here. When is the next crusade? I have no idea. I don't think there will be a next crusade. This Pope doesn't seem interested in it. And Bryce, I'm glad you like social studies. You're in the right place. Good to see you, Otter. Can you tell us about Joan of Arc? Who would win, Napoleon versus Simon Bolivar? Simon's really good at like guerrilla warfare, and really an underrated general on the field as well. And obviously Latin America would not have gained its independence without guys like Simon Bolivar, but I'd take Napoleon. So let me see here. Then he said, can you tell us about Joan of Arc? Oh yeah. So Joan of Arc was a French peasant girl who around the age of 15 reportedly said she had had visions of Jesus and the Virgin Mary, encouraging her to rise up in rebellion against the English, who controlled large sections of France because of their victories in the second phase of the 100 Years' War in the 1410s and 1420s. Eventually, she led French forces into different battles, like the Siege of Orleans. She helped encourage the Dauphin, the heir to the French throne, to unite the French people against the English. At 19, she was captured by the Burgundians, who were helping the English. She was turned over to them. The church tried her, condemned her as a heretic, and then had her burned at the stake, and eventually kind of went back on its word and said that her visions actually were true, and she was made a saint in 1920. So there's a quick ditty on Joan of Arc, and I have quick ditty, not like that, quick shorts on my channel all the time. Edward, hello. How much chance you think to build of World War III caused by China, Vietnam matter? Not much, Saeed. And for me, there's already been a World War III. I think that the French-Indian War, the 7 Years' War, was the first World War. So we're wondering if World War IV will happen. Abhishek, hello, good to see you. Let me see here. Can you quickly go over why California was stolen from Mexico? The argument that California was stolen from Mexico comes from the idea that in 1821, when Mexico gained its independence from the Spanish Empire after centuries of being controlled by them, they immediately took possession of the southwestern California as parts of the Mexican country, and this was eventually conquered in the Mexican-American War. The United States won that war and then paid Mexico in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo for all of the territory, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Colorado and Nevada, and California as well as the rest of Texas that they had already, because part of Texas was already part of the United States. So that's how they got, that's how the United States got Texas. So, no, I'm not blind. It's just the lighting, and I just woke up from a nap, so I'm tired. Napoleon versus Hannibal Barca. Ooh, that's a tough one. Again, I think Napoleon's the greatest general of all time, so I'm going to keep picking him, but it'd be interesting to see how Hannibal would give Napoleon the reach around and keep surprising him and all of that stuff. Can you tell us about the Muslims, even though I already learned about that? What do you want to know about Islam? I actually have videos on this channel talking about all these topics, be it Napoleon or the Carthaginians or stuff like that. I have long-form videos that drop every Monday and Friday and short-form videos every day. I am not Japanese, but thanks for the assumption. I will take it as a compliment. The Muslims are, Islam was originally founded around 610 in the Arabian Peninsula by a merchant named Muhammad, who supposedly received the Quran, God's eternal word, from the angel Gabriel from the Bible. He said that he was the final prophet and had brought the final testimony in addition to the original book of the Christians and the Jews, the Old Testament and the New Testament for the Christians. And he brought this idea to Mecca, his home city. They rejected the idea. He was eventually kicked out of Mecca and forced to go to Medina on the Hijra. And he basically was able to convince the people of Medina to embrace his teachings, Islam, meaning submit to God. And he raised an army, took it back to Mecca, and was able to conquer that in about 630. And then 2 years later, he died. And for an entire century, his successors, the caliphs, were able to conquer all of North Africa, Spain, the Levant, Palestine area, most of Anatolia, all of the Persian Empire, the Sassanid Empire, and establish a base in the Middle East for Islam that continues to this day. Amar, good to see you. Do you know any history on Afghanistan in the 1900s? Afghanistan gained its full autonomy from the British in 1922, right after the end of the Great War. I actually wrote my master's thesis about that and about the Great Game in Britain trying to control Afghanistan, how it didn't work. So that was really fun. How many medieval knights would it take to beat a T-Rex? I don't know. A lot. You got to have them all stabbing. Mr. Riz, Ivar the Boneless. Ivar the Boneless was one of many Vikings who invaded England and conquered significant segments of it. I believe Northumbria in the 9th century, late 9th, early 10th century. Basically from 793 until about 1066, the English were constantly under raids or conquest or invasion from Vikings coming across the sea, pillaging, taking supplies, settling in certain areas. There was even Viking kingdoms like the Danelaw. For a while, the Vikings ran all of England under the North Sea Empire of men like Sweyn Forkbeard and Harthacnut. But Ivar the Boneless was one of these Viking generals, and the reason he's called the Boneless, he has that cognomen, or second title or name, is because he was. Some people believe it was because he was impotent. Others believe that he was because he was disabled and was able and didn't have the right amount of cartilage and ligamentary in his bones, so he couldn't walk. So that was one of the reasons they said that. Khalid bin Walid, one of the greatest generals. I'm trying to remember who he was a general for because I've heard that name before. I've talked about him before. You're going to have to remind me of it. Gerrymandering, a piece of crap or no? Named after a U.S. vice president. The fourth vice president, Elbridge Gerry, had been a leader, been the governor of Massachusetts, and recommended a congressional district where all the districts were cut up, and they made it a theater of politicking, and that's why in local magazine printing a political cartoon called it gerrymandering instead of Gary, which was his name. It's not gerrymandering, it's gerrymandering. And look, both sides do it all the time. The country's tried to get rid of it for the last 2 centuries, but it's basically these wonky, crazy ways that politicians draw congressional districts in the United States so that their party will be able to win that congressional seat. So, yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's absurdity, just the way it's carved up when you look at actual congressional districts. It's absolutely crazy from state to state. But I think it's politics, and I think it's just going to continue as long as you have political parties. This is why Washington warned about it. Let me see. Yeah, it's extremely hot. What is your favorite ancient civilization? Probably the Romans. I did an entire series on the Roman Empire you might want to check out, George. But yeah, I love the Roman Empire. Unless you don't consider that ancient, but classical. Ancient, if we're going way back, I really like the Egyptians. They're really fascinating. I also love the Gupta Empire, the Mauryans, the various Indian civilizations that arose. The Greeks are really fascinating too. And I'm not doing that Lamar Jackson edit. I have said that once. I've said that enough. Sorry, Leonardo. Love your movies, but gonna have to pass. Is the Earth flat? No. I, if General Li Mu wasn't executed, would the Zhao dynasty have lived on? Hands down, the greatest defensive tactician. Like the Zhao dynasty was in significant decline. I don't know if it would have ended up the exact same way, but one great general like Aetius Flavius or Li Mu or any of these is not going to stop a precipitous decline in your civilization's power and strength. As your civilization declines, you have less and less manpower, less and less willingness, less and less patriotism, and less tools to be able to secure victory. So I don't know about Ragnar Lodbrok. I've heard the name. I can't talk about it. Typical Zionist dude. What do you even know? You don't even know who I am. I've never even seen you before, so no. Moors or moops? Which is it? Moors. I'm still using, oh, yeah, okay. Let me see here. Can you tell me why Judas betrayed Jesus? According to the Christian Gospels, Judas was interested in, there's different theories about it in Christianity. According to the Christian Gospels, the most common theory is that Judas wanted money. I mean, that's the most obvious story. He wanted some money, so he betrayed Jesus to his enemies. And the Christian faith has taught various different things, like God had chosen Judas for this position, and that's why he had put him in the inner circle to show how easy it is to fall from power and grace into evil and depravity. There's other theories that he was expecting, like many of the Jewish leaders, for Jesus, if he was indeed the Messiah, to be a conquering Messiah rather than this man who taught peace and justice and love. And because he didn't conquer the Romans or free Judea from Roman oppression, he turned on him and had him betrayed. So let me see here. I am not doing the Lamar Jackson edit. Stop asking. Oh, there's my moderators. Hey, Harry. Let me see here. Hello, welcome from Tanzania. Manse, great to see you. How come Mansa Musa got so rich? Trade, the building of cities, centralization of power. Basically, the heavy taxes that were levied on Arab merchants allowed an accumulation of wealth for the Mali Empire, but eventually, and the cosmopolitan nature of the city of Timbuktu, or Timbuktu, as the Westerners call it, allowed for Mansa Musa to acquire as much gold as he actually did. His influence grew greatly. His dedication to Islam made him extremely popular with Arab merchants. And basically everyone was coming to Timbuktu for one reason or another because of all the goods that were readily available to him. Which Sigismund? There's been a lot of Sigismunds, Johnny. And Elmo, hello. Love your show. Yeah. Yes. Your friend isn't getting the shout out HV, but I'm just going to give you a shout out and say do something better with your life. Neelam, hello. Historical relevance of Barry Lyndon. I'm trying to remember. Again, don't know everything about history. Know a lot, but don't know everything. Not sure exactly who that is. Guest, hello. Did Rasputin sleep with the Tsarina? You know, this is a common theory. I'm a Russian historian by trade, actually. A common theory is that Rasputin actually had an affair with Tsarina Alexandra, the wife of Nicholas II, and helped bring the empire down. I don't see any indication that there ever was a romantic affair between them. She had a she was very dependent on him because he supposedly had this ability to cure her son of his disease. I don't think Rasputin and the Empress had an affair. I think she was extremely devoted to Nicholas, and Nicholas was a good family man, so I just don't see that happening. Yeah. King Baldwin IV, he was the king of Jerusalem who was able to withstand and defeat Saladin, of all people, one of the greatest commanders ever, on several different occasions. Only after his death was Saladin able to actually take over Jerusalem in 1187. Baldwin was, of course, the king of Jerusalem, but he was also a leper who wore armor, including a mask, to hide his disease. How was Germany so successful in World War II? I believe you mean World War III, which is my opinion, but basically the Nazi Wehrmacht, or war machine, was extremely successful because it moved with great speed, blitzkrieg. Basically, the way the Germans saw it, if they could knock out their enemies before their enemies lined up, after centuries of every side waiting for each other to line up, if the Nazis could just knock out their enemy before their enemies could line up properly, then they could defeat them. They for a force to get on the French Maginot Line. That proved to be risky but successful. The Polish army was completely surprised by them and had no military training or technology comparable to the German war machine. And the Russians at first were totally overwhelmed, but because of their high productivity, were eventually able to catch up in production. The United States didn't defeat the Germans by having better military tacticians or better technology, although the tacticians, you could argue, are better, like Ike and Patton. But the United States did beat them by having the better ability to produce, something the Nazis did not. Can you do some stuff on Siegen warfare, trebuchets, siege warfare, trebuchets, battering rams, etc.? So battering rams, I don't know how long those have existed. I know the Romans used them. I think maybe even the Egyptians used them. Trebuchets were an event. Catapults were very common, where you put a rock down, you pull it with a levy and slap and allow it to fly. Trebuchets were more of on a rotating basis, so they had a pinwheel, almost like a windmill, that would come back and forth, and you would load a boulder in and shoot it over. It was a lot quicker than a catapult, and it was a lot heavier and bigger to move. They also had siege towers where soldiers would line up inside on either side of these two big wooden walls and advance towards a tower and ladders. But if I'm correct, George, they had ladders and battering rams thousands of years ago for sieges. If anyone became an expert at siege, it was the Ottomans, who used gunpowder and cannon fire to destroy the defenses around Constantinople in 1453, when they destroyed the Byzantine Empire. Would Alexander the Great conquered India if he pursued? It's dicey. He lost a couple of the encounters in India. I have an entire video on his life if you want to learn more. But his soldiers were worn out and tired and wanted him to go back. And so it wasn't conclusive. I think he probably would have figured out a way to beat them. But with an army and with rations overextended, he probably wanted out at that point. What Christian quote do you want me to answer? Will you be doing YouTube simultaneously with other platforms? Yes, I will. Thank you for asking, Steve. So I'm here on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, X. We just launched our TikTok yesterday. We just went live on X and Instagram for the first time yesterday. I'm also on Facebook, where I do posts and updates and things like that, early releases. On TikTok, I do extra bonus content. So yeah, we're going to be doing live Q&As and stuff like that on X and Instagram. X we tried to do last night. We just couldn't figure out chat. So we'll be figuring that out and doing that next weekend. We're here every Friday and Saturday, by the way, at 6 p.m. Eastern, answering all of your questions related to history and the like. Would Germany have won the Great War? No. Germany was in a really precarious position to win the Great War because they really didn't have strong allies. The Austro-Hungarians were in decline. The Ottomans were in decline. The Bulgarians were aggressive but not strong enough to withstand all the other European powers. Of all the modernized empires, Germany was pretty formidable, and of all the real empires involved in that war, the Central Powers only had one of the top three. You could say Britain and France probably are the top two, and Germany could be interchangeably the top three. Then there's the United States, which is ascending into an imperial status. You have Russia behind them. Then you've got the Ottomans and the Austrians near the bottom. They're very weak. Pretty much the Austro-Hungarians, if they had to fight, were struggling to defeat the Italians, but they would have also lost to the Japanese had the Japanese been able to get all the way over to Europe. But Japan was part of that war, and them not winning that war is why they built up their military and started attacking China in the 1930s, which led to their involvement in the next World War. But yeah, Japan was probably stronger than China, and thanks to revolts from the Arabs and the British colonies in Africa attacking them, the Ottomans were extremely overpowered. In fact, one of the reasons the infamous Armenian genocide happened, which was also the genocide of Assyrian Christians and Greeks by the Turks in 1914, 15, and 16, was because the Russians were attacking in the Transcaucasus regions, and the Ottomans were terrified of the Armenians going elsewhere. Do you know any facts about Tonga? Not a huge amount. I know it's an island nation. I know it gained its independence. I think it was owned by the British for a while. King Sigismund of Hungary. Again, there's been several Sigismunds. Which Sigismund? I've gotten the Ethan Hawke comparison a lot. I take that as a compliment. Why did Octavian strip Lepidus of everything except the office of Pontifex Maximus and let him keep that title till his death? He basically bought out Lepidus's contract in order to take over North Africa and start uniting an army and a strong Mediterranean fleet that he would need under Agrippa to defeat Mark Antony. Yeah. Salute from Serbia. A salute to you too. I hear you guys are going through some stuff right there now. Thank you for joining us, George. Hababu, great to see you. Why is it called World War I and World War II? Why can't they just call it British wars? There's been bigger wars in the past. I don't think there's been bigger wars than either of those world wars and the First World War in the 7 Years' War. They are indeed British wars, but you've also got France and its imperial colonies. You've got Germany and its imperial colonies. You have Russia and the Soviet Union. You've got the United States. You've got Western powers like Argentina, Mexico. You have Japan in both wars on two different sides. You have China helping the Allies in both wars. So it's kind of it's kind of not just a British war at all. Thank you, Mario. I'm glad that I'm not handsome at all. Was Moses Ramesses II's brother? If we're going to believe the biblical accounts, he wasn't necessarily related to him like the Prince of Egypt or the Ten Commandments has us think. He was kind of like a stepbrother and was clearly probably distinguishable because he was a Jew, but I have no idea. But we're just taking based off of what the text says. So, Ethan, hello. Scipio Africanus versus George Washington. George Washington is an overrated general. I love George Washington. He had many great victories, but assuming he is the greatest American general of all time is wrong. He's not even the best American general to ever become president. That's probably Zachary Taylor, although Dwight Eisenhower is a close second. But Washington's a great general, but he's not the best general. He's not even the best general of his era. Howe was probably a better general. Scipio Africanus, I would take him. Britain is the most hated Europe country of Germany on first place, mate. Yep, I've heard that. The Danish, yeah, kind of. What did Jesus do in Egypt? No idea. We don't even know if he went there. Why was the UK in such a bit behind in 1919, considering it was owed 4 times more billions than it owed to others, and the domestic economy is quite stable? War debt, casualties, loss of life, the colonies demanding independence. Britain had a lot of different issues and fires to put out after the war. There was a lot of instability in the British Empire due to independence movements in Ireland and India and Africa. So, I don't know, Mr. Riz. Let me see. David, hello. Ray, hello. Sheila, hello. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Who are the Bulgarians? The Bulgars, they're actually a distinct group of people. I don't know if they're a subset of Slavs, but I think they might be a subset of the Slavic peoples. So Slavic peoples would include people like most of the people in southeastern Europe. The Russians are a Slavic people to some extent. But the Bulgars were a certain group of people who settled in what is now Bulgaria and parts of Romania. They even built up an empire. In fact, their emperors were the first one to ever use the title Tsar in about the 10th century. Let me see here. Ottoman Empire lost their king against Serbs. Yep. Maria, welcome and thank you for joining us. Why is Iran and Israel fighting? Well, they're not technically fighting right now. Basically, Israel attacked Iran a couple of weeks ago, and that led to what's called the 12-Day War, which ended with the Trump ceasefire. Basically, Israel is very worried about Iran getting nuclear weapons. The Islamic Republic has wanted to destroy Israel for a long time. They see them as a satanic extension of the West and its evils and colonialism, and so they have condemned Israel on multiple occasions. However, they are kind of alone in the fact that they are A, very radical, and B, very opposed to other Muslims, because the Muslims around them in Arabia and Syria are Sunni Muslims and they are Shia Muslims. So they've kind of been isolated, and I would say in some ways defanged because of what's happened. So the reason they're fighting, I mean, you've got hundreds of years, thousands of years of history and disagreements, and then of course the big issue is the Israelis continuing to prosecute the war against the Gazans, and that causes a huge issue for a lot of different Muslims for many obvious reasons. Friendly history in World War II, did Russia and Germany both know that they were eventually going to go to war? I don't like the idea of inevitability in history. I write about it in my Substack, where you guys can go check out and read some of my articles. But basically, Ti and Harry, if you could, please put the Substack in the channel so people know what the Substack is. And I know you know the Instagram as well, so can you type that out? Thank you so much. But Ti, basically, no. There was even this effort by Stalin that I've been reading about recently to join the Axis powers. You have the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. You have the fact that a lot of people, the fear of the Allies had when the Germans invaded Poland was because the Russians also invaded Poland. So there's obviously a great fear of two of the biggest empires with huge amounts of resources and manpower, despite having very different political theories joining together. Hitler always wanted to destroy the Soviets, so I think the Germans were more in the know about that. Look at than the Russians were. Stalin, look at Stalin and his forces. They were all stymied by the German invasion, by Barbarossa. What do you think about India versus Pakistan? I'm glad it's over. As a Westerner, I think there's this default knee-jerk reaction by a lot of Westerners to favor India over Pakistan. Pakistan's close ties to its neighbor, or to not its neighbor, but its one-over neighbor, Iran, have made the U.S. really worried about it. Pakistan is where Osama bin Laden was killed. There's been activity of radical terror, Islamic terror there, and the recent announcement that they want to develop ICBMs worries the West. So they don't need ICBMs to attack India, so why would they need it other than to attack Israel or Western countries? So there's a lot of understandable worries that America has about Pakistan. But Pakistan and India have been fighting because of the Kashmir region, and we'll see what happens next. Is there periods of history that are not? Well, by the way, this is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, our weekend Q&A part 2. We go every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern for at least an hour, answering all of your queries relating to history and social studies. So if you like that kind of stuff, or you enjoy the vibes or the sound of my voice, consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. Is there periods of history that are there periods of history that are not well documented but played a pivotal role in civilization? The earliest ones. I mean, the earliest civilizations, the Sumerians, and I mean, ancient prehistory obviously was extremely important. The development of farming, the Green Revolution. This is well before there was documentation of it. And then the earliest days of the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians and the Chinese don't have a huge amount of actual writing. They have some, but not a lot amount. So even early in history, there's not a lot of writing and accounts given that actually displays a lot of information. Let me see here. Oh, Hars is here. Hars, can you put the social medias in the chat? Great to see you. You seem like a Jew. I don't know if that's supposed to be a compliment or an insult. I'll take it as a compliment. I am not Jewish, though. I love grilled cheese sandwiches. Who doesn't like grilled cheese sandwiches? Maybe vegans, I guess, unless they use like a vegan substitute for the cheese. Gypsies, the Roma people, often overlooked, heavily persecuted by different Slavic and Germanic peoples. Obviously, they were part of the Holocaust. They were a targeted group considered indispensable by the Nazis, and gained a reputation of basically being crooked and underhanded. These are all stereotypes that really isn't true. They're obviously an Eastern European people that are distinct ethnically from other groups. I don't know if they're exactly Slavic. I don't think they are. Can you make sure to mention the ultimate in climate change in Antarctica is super scary and I'm not happy. So the worry about climate change in Antarctica comes from the melting polar ice caps, although that kind of has gone back and forth. And there have been predictions, a lot of them have not come true, but there is a growing fear that warming temperatures, hotter and hotter years on record due to fossil fuel usage and CO2 emissions, although those have been curbed by the Western world, will eventually lead to overheating, the melting of the polar ice caps, the rising of the ocean levels, and the flooding of different areas. That hasn't happened. There were predictions that said it would happen by 2025. It's not happening yet. But you've got Venice, for instance, which will cease to exist in about 20 years because of rising sea levels. So history is written by winners, yes. And there's history that's written from below, and there's history that's written from different types of winners and different groups of people. Harmonizing and synthesizing that is how we get a basic understanding, which is what we do all the time. Serbia, much love, exactly. Much love to Syria. The Mongol Empire, MBY. What does MBY mean? What do you mean, Ovia? Oiva? Bring the Viking Age back. I mean, I'm okay without it. Pillaging and all that. Let me see, what happened? The Twitter stream, it didn't happen. Yeah, but Twitter, so basically, Hars, I figured out the Twitter thing. I did it, I talked for a little bit, but I couldn't see anyone chatting or typing. And so Twitter doesn't have a live active chat. I had to get verified. I set up my TikTok, by the way, but basically now I have to add Restream, and Restream will allow me to have a live chat going on. So I went over to Instagram and did it there, and I came here and did another 20 minutes or so just to get people over to the Instagram where we were able to have a small talk for a few minutes and then kind of bounce from there. But basically, yeah, Hars, we are streaming on X again next week, and I don't think it's gonna be Friday because Friday's 4th of July, so probably Saturday. But basically the way it works is I've got to get a restream so that I can have a chat so I can see people's questions and stuff like that. What do you think about India versus Pakistan? Already answered that. General Patton was indeed a beast. I'll take Grant over Africanus. Grant's ability to just cut the South in twain with Vicksburg, Chattanooga, unconditional surrender, it's pretty fascinating. How many presidents were left-handed? I don't know. I'm left-handed, so I should probably figure that out. I did not get a Switch too. We are getting a Twitch here, though. We're doing Twitch, we're doing Discord, we're doing a lot this summer. It's going to be a lot of fun. Do you know how many Irish die with Serbs on fields in World War I, or World War II, as I consider it? A few 100,000. I mean, they were mainly fighting in the Western Front with the British. Why did Canada get independence from the British? The British let Canada have autonomy from the 1830s onward, 1840s onward. And then it was in 1980, they finally gave them full political independence. There was just this continual colonial relationship, and Canada wanted full autonomy. The British gave it when they met certain conditions. It wasn't the rush job that it was in Africa. How did the conflicting ideologies of federalism and states' rights shape the legal, political, and social outcomes of the Reconstruction era in the United States? Oh, that's a fascinating and excellent question. That's like a college-level question. Thank you, Muffin. And Kit, thank you for joining us. Jock, thanks for joining us. Yes, the Bulgars are indeed a Slavic people. Thank you. A subset of Slavs, like the Slovenians or something like that. But basically, or the Serbs. How did the conflicting ideologies? So basically, the fear was that the federal government could not continue a military operation of the sovereign states forever, and this eventually allowed the Democrats to gain more and more power in Congress and more power on the state legislative levels, and eventually can throw out the Union troops one by one, who left the final two states in 1877. So the states' right issue came back. The Southerners said we have a right to elect who we want, and white former Confederates and Democrats gained the right back to vote, became part of the Union. They started to immediately suppress the rights of blacks, curbing the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments and their effect on the native freed blacks. So, good question. Let me see here. Hi, Ann Kit. What about Jesus, Bolt? What do you want to ask about him? Let me see here. Polish or Slavs, Statue of Westminster. What about Jesus? Bulgarians kill women, children. Yeah, the Bulgarians were extremely aggressive in that war, and really saw an opportunity to pick off land from the Russians by helping the Germans. Sweden migrated to Russia. Are most Russians part Swedish? The Varangian Vikings, which is part of my Russian history short series, you can go check out. But basically, they settled and helped create the Kievan Rus by intermarrying and developing a shared culture with Slavic peoples along the Volga, Dnieper, and Don rivers. This Kievan Rus was destroyed by the Mongols, but was reformed in some ways by Muscovy, as Moscow became the predominant city in the area. And the Prince of Moscow was basically seen as the Grand Prince of all the other regions like Pskov and Novgorod and Kiev. And so the origins of both Russian and Ukrainian society come from the Nordic peoples intermarrying with them. So the Russians are not Swedish, but there are a lot of Swedes and people like that in Russia. And thank you so much. Who is that? Muffin? Off to dinner. Have a great dinner, Muffin. Enjoy it. Don't forget to tip the waiter just like you tipped me. Really appreciate that, Muffin. Thank you for joining us. Is the Roman Empire still alive today? No, I don't think the Roman Empire collapsed in the West in 476 and the East in 1453. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of people have seen the political power shifting to a social power by the Catholic Church in the 5th century in Western Europe. So in some ways, the extension of the Roman, that could be seen as an extension of the Roman Empire, but the church doesn't have a political power even during the medieval period that the Romans did. They were not as much of a centralizing authority. And Mohammed, thank you so much. Does Jews have a right? Wow, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Does Jews have a right to acquire land in Palestine with thanks for your efforts? No. No, the Jews do not have a right to acquire land in Palestine any more than the Palestinians have a right to acquire land that belongs to the Israelis. I mean, this is very simple stuff, and hopefully we're seeing it finally get to where it needs to be. So thank you so much, Mohammed, for your donation and that very good question. But basically, the ceasefire could bring about a two-state solution that allows the Palestinians to govern from the West Bank with a new and what I have suggested from the beginning. Get rid of all the different political powers in the region. Netanyahu goes, Hamas goes, and the Palestinian Authority and corrupt Abbas goes. That could be a reasonable situation. But no, settlement is only hurting Jewish credibility and prestige in the West, and obviously causing a lot of problems for the Palestinians in the West Bank. So let me see. There's going to be fighting when I steal their nukes. Please don't do that. Why you look and sound like Adam Driver? I'll take that as a compliment. I don't think I sound anything like him, but Slavs and our old name and for old faith Orthodox Christians that's one term, but they're an ethnic people. What are your views on Pakistan? Is it a terrorist nation or a victim of terrorism? I think it's probably both. I think every terrorist nation or radical Islamic nation that has terrorist elements in it often suffers under that. I mean, look at the killing of the Alawites by the Syrian government right now. So, and from the United States, I don't go into more specifics than that. What would the world be like if the Axis powers won both wars? The Axis powers only fought in one war, but if the Central powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey won that world war, the Ottoman Empire would have survived. There wouldn't be a division and a recalibration of the Middle Eastern Islamic states like Syria and Lebanon. These modern states would not be created, even Palestine and Israel. For a little while, they would have had a reprieve and wouldn't have fully collapsed. At the same time, the Germans would have taken more land from France, probably taken over all of Belgium. Significant area. We saw what happened when the Russians surrendered. The Bolsheviks at Brest-Litovsk, huge areas, including all of Poland, basically, significant portions of Lithuania, and Western Russia past the Urals was given to the Germans. So. It would have, and Austro-Hungary probably would have been able to control most of the Balkans, and Italy would have not advanced. Germany would have taken African colonies from the British and the French, and who knows when they would have given them their independence. The good part of it is there would not have been the rise of the Nazis. Now, if the Nazis had won the next war, Britain would have lost several of its colonies to them. Who knows what the United States would have been made to do. If a war had ended before they had joined, who knows what that could look like. If a war ended after they joined, they might have had to pay some war reparations. I don't see the Nazis invading the United States, although some of them wanted to. The Soviet Union might have been dismembered and cut up. Man in the High Castle kind of talks about that. Japan would have probably eventually taken several parts of Kamchatka, including Vladivostok, from the Soviet Union. There's that. Yes. So there's a few details about what would have happened if the enemies had won those wars. Some counterfactual stuff. Yes, but the UK was owed 4 times as much war debt than it owed others because we underwrote all of Europe's loans and most dominions and protectorates were pretty committed to the imperial project. Yes, that's true. And it is a geopolitics chat, but it's also history and social studies and all of that stuff, and those things are connected, I guess. Esau and Jacob is the main reason there isn't peace in the Middle East. Yeah, it's more complicated than that, to be sure. What do you think about Christianity? Obviously, I think that the Western world would not exist in its modern form without Christianity. I have said before that the most important moment in human history is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, because that's the creation of the Christian religion. Without his death, there is no Christian religion. The development of whether the resurrection happened or not is part of the theological debate. As I'm at 1%. But basically, the theological debate centers around Jesus and his resurrection. But the historical side of it is just as fascinating too, because in the history you have Jesus basically after his death. You have the creation of the Christian church. You have the growth of the Orthodox and Catholic churches throughout the medieval period. Then you have Protestantism. You have the West being kind of formed on this Judeo-Christian work ethic that's extremely important to its development socially. So obviously, you can't have the West without Christianity. And as a historian of the West, I have to admit and understand that, whatever my personal perspectives are. I don't share my religious views here. I've said before that I believe that there is a God. I sleep better knowing there's a higher power holding all of us together one way or another. But, I could be a deist. I could be a Muslim. I've talked about Islam, and some people think I talk about Islam too favorably, or Judaism too favorably, or Christianity too favorably. And some people think I'm just a secularist and that I hate God, and that's not fully true. But yeah, so there's a lot of different things there for different reasons. But yeah, great question. Thank you. Ron, you're not Trump, so I'm not calling you that. Dream to have Ukrainian soul for New World use. I've heard that before, but yeah, the swastika was originally a symbol of the Hindus that he turned around. It was also from ancient Aryan societies, so that's why it was used. It's also called the Hakenkreuz, the hooked cross. I've looked into the history of Israel. I know what you're talking about, and I understand where you're coming from, Zeno. Let me see. What was the reason of U.S. bombing nukes on Japan? Great question, Ankit. Basically, the United States felt that the Japanese were not surrendering soon enough, and so they worried that a land invasion of the Japanese islands would require Soviet cooperation, which would require more concessions in Europe or Asia to the Soviets. Truman was a staunch anti-communist and did not want to do that. What else? The invasion of the Japanese mainlands by the U.S. and the Allies, Britain and the Soviet Union, probably would have cost the lives of millions of people. Perhaps even more. It would have been worse for the Japanese than the rest. So that's kind of why. And thank you, Lynn. I have not, Day. The thing that we announced was that we would only collect what we had to pay off our debts. And yes, follow us here. Those are our social media handles if you haven't gotten them yet. So now I've got that pinned, and I'm trying to catch up to the chat. I promise I will. And thank you so much for the gift, Eric. Please join us as become a member and help the Friendly Neighborhood History channel grow. I promise to do my best to answer all of the questions that you've got. We've got about 20 more minutes in the live. Let me see here. Yeah, so follow us on those social medias. We will have a TikTok handle, but Hars and Harry, please follow me there. Hello, Jordan. Good to see you again. Senda, hello. Be happy to hear your war history. Send it my way. I'm trying to get through everything. Birthday shout out to my sister. Yeah. Well, I mean, she needs to change her name, but yeah. Kevin, good to see you. Let me see, just going through the chat. Jesus was a Hindu monk, learned spirituality from India and Tibet. I love this. Everyone wants to claim Jesus. Jews, white people, the Nazis said he was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. I mean, some African nationalist groups say that he was black. Jesus was a Semitic man. He looked very, very much like an Arab or Jew in the Middle East does. There you go. Sorry to disappoint you, but there you go. Why can't the Israelis and Iranians just fight their war and leave us out of it? Because the Israelis continue to rely on the United States to be their backup, and the United States is very worried because Iran has designs on not only attacking the Middle East and Israel, but also the West. Geoengineering, since you're talking about climate change. Don't know much about geoengineering, so can't help you there. Yes, we are coming out of an ice age. We've been in a mini ice age. I'll take the French compliment. Sí, yo hablo español. Yes, Kevin, it's always great to see you. What are your thoughts? I don't know what that is. Okay, good. I finally caught up to the chat. Now I'm moving forward, trying to get faster. Do you think the America will declare war on the Iranian dictatorship because it possesses weapons of mass destruction as it did with Saddam? No. The MO for the U.S. has been totally different from this compared to the war with Iraq. The MO is a quick strike, pull out, not a long time ground invasion, not a regime change. None of those things have been popular with Trump or his base, so I just don't see it happening. Interesting. Let me see, getting through the rest of the chat here, trying to catch up. If you haven't had your question answered, just be patient. I will answer it soon. Yes, Harry, that's funny but not true. In history, every civilization is always looking for advancement, so why can't the third world countries also research in nuclear? That's the only way they can advance in civilization. A lot of countries don't have a problem with third world civilizations developing nuclear power. I mean, India and Pakistan were allowed to do it. The fear about Iran doing it is, what are you doing it for? There are certain uranium enrichment levels where if you enrich to a certain level, you will be able to build a weapon that could destroy or annihilate millions of people. The nuclear weapons now are 10 times as bad as they were the two weapons that were dropped on the Japanese. Cultivating nuclear power is really important, and nuclear power is very efficient. It's very renewable, so there's a lot of great things that can come from it. I felt that the conversation of conflict starts in a strange way, where some regimes are considered inherently bad, and everything bad is smeared to them, irrespective of the fact of the matter. It can obviously be that way. There's obviously always a bogeyman for people in history. I mean, look at the Red Scare. Look at how understandably, the hatred of communism was understandable, but a lot of people did not actually know why they hated communism. They didn't have a full understanding of what was so bad about communism. They had a bogeyman approach to it, and that led to witch hunts. So, anyways, let's see here. Why haven't we gone back to the moon for years, mate? We don't want to. The Soviets challenged the U.S. after they went to the moon to go to Mars, and so that's been the slow but steady thing. That's why the Viking missions in the 1970s were focused on going to Mars. Let me see here. Are the Western and Eastern ideas of dragons related? Knights and dragons, ancient Chinese dragons? No, the Chinese dragons, very symbolically different. I don't think they're seen as evil. The dragon in Western lore and mythology is seen as evil because it's a representation, extension of the devil, because the devil is called the serpent or dragon in the scriptures. So because of that, many Western lore is about destroying the dragon, destroying the monster, destroying evil. It's not about honoring or respecting it like the Chinese see the dragon as a fearful and powerful creature. Russian history is interesting. Yes, I absolutely love Russian history. That's definitely an understatement. But yeah. I feel that the conversation... Okay, I already answered that. Let me see. Mohammed, thank you again. That's very nice of you. Russia is strong. I think they're kind of more on the paper tiger side than we think, though. Yeah. Thank you, Eric, for the membership. Really appreciate it. Let me see here. What do you know about the Byzantine Empire? I like calling it the Byzantine. It's the Eastern Roman Empire. It lasts for about 1,000 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476. It has some great emperors like Basil the Great and, of course, Justinian. Eventually is really hampered by the Muslims, be it the Seljuk Turks or the Mamelukes or the Rashidun Caliphate, and comes to rely on Western Europe to help. This intervention becomes known as the Crusades. Attacks from both Western Christians and from the Bulgarians and the Muslims continue to hamper the Byzantines and lead to their eventual decline. And in 1453, the Ottomans conquer Constantinople and destroy the Byzantine Empire, killing the last Byzantine Emperor, Constantine the 11th. So let me see here. I only ask because I have a Swedish blood. Always wondered if a passed down might mean Russian, possibly Slavics as well. Yes, definitely a connection. And there's Nordic Russians to this day. There's Finns and Swedes. I mean, one of the longest borders is Finland and Russia. The longest border anyone shares with Russia is Finland. Let me see. Will America ever go back to the gold standard? They've got to go to some standard because having the dollar as your standard for the dollar is not going to work for a long time, especially with the devaluation of the dollar over the last few years. So they're going to need something, and cryptocurrency is probably going to be it, but if not, then gold. Yes, there does, Kay. I have a theory. Empires don't collapse. They change. From the Roman Empire became a church, then the British Empire became a bank. Yeah, there's leftover. I think it's more of a vulture scavenger thing where there's this dead, picture this giant dead monster and you're picking off parts of it and taking it for yourself. And that's what I see with the Roman Empire collapsing. That's what I see with the rise of the Catholic Church. That's what I see with the British Bank and its influence with the collapse of the British Empire. Why did we attack Iraq for the 9/11 hijackers, even though the vast majority of hijackers were Saudi Arabs? There was a fear that Saddam Hussein was connected to Afghanistan, and was connected to terrorism, was sponsoring terrorism, and had weapons of mass destruction, and was standing up to the U.S., and the U.S. didn't like that. Basically, there was really very poor reasons on very dubious evidence that we just needed to go in there and spread democracy for the sake of spreading democracy because Saddam was bad, which he was a bad dictator, but what did you replace him with? The question shouldn't be what do you do, it's who do you replace, it's who do you replace it with. So replacing the Shah of Iran was popular with the Iranians in the 1970s, and the United States allowed that to happen, but it was replaced with the Ayatollahs and the radical Islamic regime, which is even more repressive and even more, and shot the West in the foot because it's even more antithetical to Western ideas and stuff like that. So the truth of the matter is, Emperor, the war with Iraq was a big mistake from a geopolitical sense. It was all about regime change. It was all about sending democracy. Democracy works so well in the West, it must work in the Middle East. And the answer is no. It's a completely different culture. It was an insensitive and stupid decision. Captain India, I'm good. I hope you're doing good too. KYD, we don't get to the present without the past. So yes. Okay, Evan's been around. I haven't seen any of his quotes, his statements yet. Ryan, hello. Camp 4, hello. Hope you're still here. Ayudish, great to see you. If the KMT has defeated the communists, that would have been interesting. China run as a nationalist government, probably kind of a neo-imperialist Western ally. It might have ended the Cold War sooner because the Soviets would have had less support. The United States probably would have been able to win the Korean War. Who knows what would have happened in Vietnam, because the communist Chinese basically tried to force communism down everyone's throat in Asia. Why USA nuked Japan when they could show the test footage to stop them, and why didn't stop with the city only? They weren't recording test footage, I believe, of their testing. That might have been an interesting idea, but that wasn't necessarily going to stop them. The United States had been firebombing Tokyo for a long time and conquering islands, and the Japanese would not stop. In fact, even after the second bomb was dropped, the Japanese were hesitant to stop. After Hiroshima was bombed, they refused to stop. Let me see here. Yes, it is a pagan symbol. Jesus was an avatar. It was predicted that he will save mankind and become a great king, but Herod, attempting to find and kill the baby Jesus for safety purposes, he was sent to India. That's not what the story says. The story says he was sent to Egypt. So yes. Jen, great to see you. I've always wondered why you haven't joined us here on the live stream, so it's good to see you. Striker, great to see you. How was your live on Insta? I have no socials, just FYI question. Do you believe Constantine had his bridge vision of a Christ that made him lead to conversion? Or I think Constantine knew that Christianity was rising in popularity and power in Europe, and so he exploited the Christian faith in order to get there, but I think he eventually had a genuine conversion, his interference in Nicaea, his baptism at the end of his life. I think Constantine became a Christian, had a Christian conversion, the first Christian Roman emperor, but I also think that he really didn't, but I don't necessarily believe the story of the Battle of the Milvian Bridge and him seeing a sign in the sky, putting it on his soldier's shield, the Cairo in this sign, ye shall conquer. I don't believe that. But yeah, it's okay, Striker. We had a good time on Instagram, and we were only able to go there because of a chat. On X, we weren't able to do the chat. So we'll be live streaming on X with a chat now that I figured out how to do it in probably a week or so, and we'll be back on Instagram. We are now officially on TikTok, too. When you say Christian work ethic, you're meaning slavery, right? No, slavery is one of the biggest and interesting things is the profanation of what is traditionally considered Christian work ethic, Christian values with slavery. The justifications for slavery were made by both the North and the South. The justifications for slavery were made by the South. The North made the fight against it. It's not that Christians own slaves. Everyone owns slaves. It's that Christianity fought actively to end slavery based on its values. And there are many Christians who were okay with slavery and thought that it was okay and justified it, and many Christians who took advantage of it. And there isn't a necessary unilateral condemnation of slavery in Scripture. There seems to be an implied message in Christianity of if Jesus is freeing people from sins, then freeing people from slavery is probably a good thing too. Look at the story of the Exodus in the Old Testament for more examples of that. Let me see. Can you talk about early anti-communism in the United States? Who were the first cast suspicion on the Soviet Union during World War III? That anti-communism actually dates back, Gayahan, to the 1910s. As soon as the Soviet Union becomes the Soviet Union, fears of communism run wild for the United States in the first Red Scare. I mean, you have the Attorney General hunting down people they suspect of being communists. They're worried about a global worldwide revolution, which many communists in the Soviet Union want. There's worry about sleeper cells and spies and all sorts of things. Sacco and Vanzetti were targeted because they were radical socialists and Italian immigrants, and they were basically falsely accused of a murder and killed for it. It's a horrible, horrible chapter in American history. So the Red Scare was obviously a huge fear of the 1920s, and then it got even more fearful in the 1940s because the Soviet Union wasn't and that reality, and the United States, who had worked with the Soviet Union closely, then attempted to overcompensate by basically trying to shadow ban and punish anyone who was or had been a communist. Let me see. Every nation had slaves one way or another. That's very true. This is not the Trump chain. This is Patrick. Jesus was a Jew. There were no Palestinians in his day. The area was known as Judea. Palestine would be the name given to by the Romans 100 years later. You think that King Basil II was a top 10 king in history? Emperor Basil the Great. I don't know if he's top 10, but he's definitely up there. Yep. Red Rum, good to see you. I've got Maui. You beat up the sun. I don't need to claim Jesus respectfully and gratefully. Absolutely, and you're not required to. Yeshua was a eunuch, a Levite, and a false apocalyptic Jewish prophet that has been wrong for 2,000 years. Yes, I know your perspective on that. That's a common perspective. That's what the Talmud says, to some extent. Was the Red Scare justified? I've often seen it like this. It was obviously overblown in many of its aspects, be it Joseph McCarthy just basically witch hunting people, basically turning on anyone who you felt was an enemy and trying to destroy them and their reputation, the attacks on Hollywood and stuff like this. These were real overreactions to the issue. But there was a real fear of communism. And the United States made it very clear after the end of World War III or World War II, whatever you want to call it, that communism was bad and that communism was destructive. And I think that the U.S. failed to actually fully educate its people on why it was destructive and bad, and there was just this bogey banning of it rather than a full explanation. And so the truth of the matter is that the Red Scare, it was, what if we found out that a bunch of people in the United States were part of ISIS or had worked for ISIS or something like that? Or there would be a giant fear of that today, and there would be an overblown reaction. It's just part of human nature to overreact in a situation of panic and fear. So I think in some ways it was justified. I just think there was a lot of overreactions, obviously. What are your opinions on the Iran situation? Okay, I get asked this a lot, and I'm willing to, and I'll answer it again. Basically, Ari, the war needs to end. Iran, I think, has been neutralized to some extent. Who knows when they'll be back? I think the United States did this to stop Iran from developing nuclear capabilities because Iran has been inconsistent with what they want to do with those nuclear capabilities, and there's got to be some sort of agreement on the table that's binding. So, let me see. Harry, what was up with Evan? Okay. I didn't see Evan. Did he leave or something? Amazon, what do you want to know about Chester Arthur? What does the moon ring look like a bell? Ancient cultures speak about times there was no moon. Could it be a satellite used to terraform the planet? No. Persian Empire is fascinating. The Achaemenids, the Sassanids, and the Parthians, who the Romans could never defeat. They're very fascinating. Thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate that. Hello, Max. Tayyib, it's good to see you. What do you know about Order of Dragon, King Lazar, Harblavonic, and Vlad Tepes, aka Dracula, was knights in that order? It sounds like a Wallachian order of knights, that were, or that actually sounds Czech. It sounds like a Hungarian and a Wallachian order of knights. Wallachia was what Romania was basically called in the 14th, 15th centuries. Vlad Tepes obviously develops a reputation of impaling his Ottoman and even Hungarian enemies, and then becomes the inspiration for Count Dracula. Thank you for joining us from Argentina. Russia has more nukes than America. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe. All that aid the U.S. gave to Ukraine could have been used for our homeless. Big impact could have been made. Yeah, hopefully ending that war will be a good thing. Ruya, good to see you. I'm trying to catch up to the chat. I know I'm probably behind. You will get your questions answered. I'm doing what I can. What do you think about the Constitution of the United States? I think it's a really interesting document. It's a really interesting attempt to create a balanced democratic republic. It's obviously the supreme law of a land where I come from, because I'm an American, or from the United States, I should say. But what's interesting about the Constitution is that it's immediately created with fixing it in plan. The 10 Amendments, the Bill of Rights, the amendment system that's created is created to satiate people who want more individual rights, the anti-federalists, and that's why James Madison, who's kind of an anti-federalist at that point, who believes in individual liberties, writes it. So the Constitution would have never gotten off the ground without the Bill of Rights and without the ability to fix it and to update it. I mean, you have an amendment that bans the sale of alcohol. Then you have an amendment that gets rid of that. The Constitution is an adjustable document. ATKT, I'm good. I won't do that. Are Catholics Christians? 9/11 was an inside job. Bush's friends were with the bin Ladens. Rumsfeld said 121 million trillion was missing on September 10th, 2007. I've heard all those theories. I don't buy any of them. I do think that the United States wanted regime change in Iraq, and that was a mistake, and I think Afghanistan was also a mistake as well. The U.S. would have been better not going in there and focusing on taking out bin Laden through strikes and missions, and perhaps even potentially a regime change in Afghanistan, but you went from Taliban to Taliban. They obviously messed up there. Everyone, please like and subscribe or else. Yeah, I'm not going to do anything, Red Rum. But good reference to The Shining. Who won? I don't think either side won. I'm not a flat earther. Best Fortnite player, hello. The U.S. and U.K. won't send troops anymore. Instead, they'll send small teams, special forces, parliamentary officers, and clandestine agents. Yes, full-scale war is a bad word in the U.S. lexicon. So, Bushboy, hello. The Outdoors Dude, great to see you again. Red Rum, I appreciate you joining. Hopefully you're watching the recording. Nixon took us off a gold standard, and if we went back on the dollar crumbles. Yes, because gold is more valuable. As much as a mistake, Iraq as the world is no better off since UK and the US and other European allies stopped interfering in all these countries. That's true, but have they? I mean, look at the strike on the nuclear facilities. Look at all of that stuff. The US is still intervening, but I think it's changing the way it intervenes without war and without a heavy hand. What's your opinion on the Anglo-Saxons? Fascinating. The Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes coming from northern Germany and Denmark, able to settle in England and basically terraform it, throw the Celts away. Most of the Latin peoples who were Roman descendants went into Wales, which is why the Welsh consider themselves to be a distinct people to this day. And obviously the Angles and the Saxons were raiders, who were eventually challenged by other raiders, the Vikings, because Viking literally means raider, Vikingur. The Tulsa Race Massacre and the Move bombing were two incidents that the U.S. dropped bombs on its citizens. Why isn't that talked about more? I don't know if the U.S. did the Tulsa Race Massacre, if they used bombs on their citizens. The Move bombing, I don't know enough about to really comment. Paul did not spread Christianity by the sword. There is no source that will say that Christianity was spread by the sword during the first 3 centuries of its existence. Maybe after Constantine, but not before then. I would argue since 2010 has got significantly worse because the global liberal order that was enforcing its ideals around the world, and therefore you saw a rising democracy. Yes, democracy is good, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, whether it's Labor or Conservative, democracy is good, so the Middle East should have democracy even if it doesn't want it or doesn't know how to handle it or doesn't want it or doesn't want to handle it. Yeah. So, Jesus visited and studied in India, particularly in Ladakh and Kashmir, and he may have been influenced by Buddhist and Hindu philosophies. Both religions predate him, but that is not true. There is no evidence for that, but I appreciate your commitment to your narrative. What do you think of King Charlemagne? Carlos Magnus, Charles the Great, created the Carolingian Empire, the basis of modern France, the basis of modern Germany and the Holy Roman Empire, created a huge empire. If anyone says the Dark Ages were the Dark Ages, look at Charlemagne's conquest, his cosmopolitan, metropolitan, and artistic and literary scene at Aachen and his other palaces, his close ties to the Pope, being crowned the King of the Romans or the Holy Roman Emperor, Charlemagne is an incredibly powerful and important ruler, perhaps the greatest medieval ruler ever. Icy, I've never seen you before, so not yet. We've got some great moderators like Harson Harry, who I hope you show some love to. Tupac or Biggie? Oh, Biggie. Yeah. His words just hypnotized me. Kosovo is Serbia. I've heard that before. Let me see. The founding fathers never tried to justify slavery. Plenty of them were against slavery and hoped it would die out. Yes, they had some of them had owned slaves. A lot of them had owned slaves. A lot of them did own slaves throughout their lives. Some of them did not own slaves, like John Adams. But they believed that slavery was incompatible with ultimate liberty and freedom. They just didn't believe the slaves deserved liberty and freedom right away, and that throwing them into freedom when they were uneducated and unskilled would be dangerous. I'm not saying I agree with that opinion. I'm saying what they thought. Opinion on Prussia. Obviously, Prussia's overpowered compared to all the other German states. Just look at what Otto von Bismarck was able to do in creating the First Prussian Empire. Yes, Jesus' teachings share similarities with Hindu and Buddhist philosophies in that he have spent time in Buddhist monasteries in Tibet. He did not spend any time in Buddhist monasteries in Tibet. This is like when people say Jesus is black or Jesus is a white guy. No. What's fascinating is that different religions teach the same thing, and the ethics that Jesus taught come from Judaism. Judaism had these ethics before. Peace, harmony, and love of neighbor is taught in Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, and ancient Judaism as well. Yes, a skewed Jew. I know there are definite problems with that. So, Red Indians are Americans. Native Americans, yes. Let me see here. That's true, Harry, very true. How do you determine which sources are reputable if learning history? Finally, a question about history that's not from a skewed perspective. I appreciate that question. I go and I see which sources say the same thing. Most of the time, the disagreements we have about history are not about the facts, but how we interpret the facts. So I'm looking at who's saying it, where are they getting it from, how close to the original are they, and do they harmonize with what I already know to be true about it? I access my prior knowledge. So please tell me about Jesus' lost years. We don't know them because there's no writings about them, but speculating that he went to India, which Jews had no ties to India, is over the top, to say the least. The Romans didn't even make it to India. There was an entire empire called the Parthians separating them that was hostile to Romans. And Jesus was from a Roman province. Yeah, let me see here. How am I rude? Rick, I hope I'm not being rude to you. Do you think Kaiser Wilhelm II and Tsar Nicholas II have been demonized? Nicholas II has been demonized because he was a bad ruler. Just check out my video where I tier rank the Russian rulers. Kaiser Wilhelm was an aggressive guy. He disregarded the wisdom of Bismarck, and he really just was doing everything he could to precipitate a war, and he got one because of that. Hi, Kay. Let me see here. Every year we pay taxes. Our government pays NAMBLA, a pedophile organization. Please look into these people. They are members. Okay, Rochelle. I'll try to do that. Jesus left Judea to study the religions of India. After 6 years of studying the Vedas with Brahmin priests, he crossed the Himalayas to study Tibetan Buddhism, which is in no historical sources whatsoever, but okay. And I understand there's not a huge amount of historical sources of what happened to him during that time, but if he's a Jew from Judea, he probably lived in Judea. Definitely not Christian. Do you believe in conspiracies or just theories? I believe there are theories, and I believe some theories have more evidence than others, and some move from the conspiracy to the regular theory thing. I think things like flat earth or hollow earth are conspiracy theories, but I think the JFK assassination being an inside job is a justifiable theory at this point, or the COVID-19 pandemic being a lab leak. Do you know anything about the Aztec religion? Quetzalcoatl and Huachetepal, two of the, I'm probably butchering those names, but two of the most important gods. One of them, I'm trying to remember the name of the jaguar god, but one of them demanded sacrifices. That's where the Aztecs developed the human sacrifice theory from. You had a polytheistic religion that was centered around nature and animal shape-shifting hybrids and things like that. Gods that were very vengeful and often at odds with each other, just like in Greek mythology. Evan was calling me weird and an a-hole for no reason earlier in the stream, and so I did a timeout. He got mad and left, just so you know. Oh, wow. That's not like Evan. Usually he's just mean towards me, not you, but he's probably drunk. I shouldn't say that. He's not allowed to drink. Good evening, Mohammed. Great to see you. You're not too late. I'm glad you're here. No, Logan, the assassination attempt on Trump was not staged. After Constantine, it was spread by sword. I wouldn't fully say it was spread by sword even after Constantine. I mean, Charlemagne spread the Christian religion by sword in some instances. Yes, Jesus did indeed say that. Was Jesus closer to the average Palestinian or the average Israeli in looks? They're not that different. They're Semitic peoples. He looked like one of them, be they Jewish or Palestinian. You can make, I mean, not Jewish as an Ashkenazi Jew, but yeah. Friendly, how is it that throughout history, the discoveries, botany, sciences, medicine, composers, astronomers, researchers, and writers of almost every dang thing, why are these guys mostly German? That's a fascinating point. I mean, they're German, they're from Germanic areas. I don't know why. I mean, Bach, Beethoven. I think the greatest composer ever is Tchaikovsky, and he's Russian, so there you go. But yeah, some of the biggest breakthroughs in sciences and medicine. I mean, you got Einstein. You have Germans. You have German Jews. Yeah, it's interesting to think about that. Kepler, one of the greatest astronomers, was Dutch. Copernicus was Polish, and obviously Ptolemy was. Copernicus was Polish, and obviously Ptolemy was an ancient Egyptian. I think when you have centers of learning in a centralized area, you tend to have a bottling up and a bottleneck of different experts who've developed different theories. So Germany being in the middle of Europe, you have different astronomers and philosophers kind of in the median there. Obviously, you have a lot of Italians who develop incredible theories and stuff like that, and you have French philosophers that are extremely important. The English have their contributions, Smith and Locke and Hobbes. It's not one thing or another. In sciences, there is definitely a predominant German theme, and I don't know exactly why that is. But the same way that the Greeks, being the center of civilization for the West, had different philosophers and scientists, like Archimedes and Aristotle, the Germany being kind of in the locus of Europe, had different philosophers and scientists and musicians developing there. And Mozart would not call himself a German, he'd call himself an Austrian. Why don't the Abrahamic religions get along more, considering they all stem from the same God, from Abraham? The closer you are, familiarity breeds contempt, and those religions are very familiar with each other. Muhammad. Most of secular scholars agreed that early Christians thought of Jesus as a prophet and as a non-divine human being, which is pretty much exactly what Islam says. That's not what they thought. I'm sorry, most early Christians did not think of him that way. They thought of him as a deity. And the raising from the deaf being the center of their religion has been key for the last, 2,000 years. I mean, I'm not saying that he did. I'm just saying that is a key tenet of Christianity. It's like me and you usually agree on the events, but not why they happened or what to interpret from them. Exactly. I do history of all types, Gamer Poodle. I answer questions. This is a Q&A, so I do history on anything that I find to be fascinating and any history that is brought before me every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, and we're winding down here, so I'm going to try to catch up to the chat. Yes, Muhammad, that's absolutely true. If you're going to study history, you have to look at religion because you're going to look at cultures, and cultures develop because of religions. The Varna system in India the caste system developed completely because of Hinduism. Fathers against slavery, yet they own slaves. Yes. People are morally complex and do all sorts of contradictory things all the time. Yeah, the maps in the 1500s were not exactly accurate because look at how they depicted the rest of the world. Look at how they depicted Asia and North and South America. And I'm glad you caught the stream too, Lifelight. It's always good to have you here. Yeah, I am a little congested. I woke up from a nap and I'm tired, so I'm always a little congested, and I haven't eaten in a while, so. But I haven't been hungry either. It's weird. Mohammed, thank you so much. You're very kind. Where is your smoking jacket? This is true history. It's too hot. We've been in a horrible heat wave in the United States, and so that's why. But thank you for your donation. Really appreciate it. Luke doesn't disagree that Jesus went to Egypt. So this is a problem in critical thinking. Luke doesn't say anything. Matthew says he went to Egypt. Mark doesn't say. If you want to look at possible contradictions, look at the end when he rises from the dead, which is the most mystical part of the narrative. Just because that's an argument from science. Because he doesn't say anything, he must not agree. Not true. He doesn't say anything, so he's kind of in the middle. But so it's maybe there's this extra account. So you can literally take a cruise to Antarctica if you got the bread to go check it out. It's an expensive vacation. Well, David, fund us, and we'll go on a vacation there, and we'll bring you with us. You got a favorite founding father? Oh, and least favorite? Ooh. My favorite is either Madison or Washington. I go back and forth. Least favorite? That's hard because I like them all. They're all interesting to me. Yeah, it's hard for me to pick a least favorite. I don't know about Thomas Paine. Just seems like he's not very American. You're very pleasant, not rude at all. What is your definition of the Greek word Christos? Comes from the Jewish word Mashiach, which is Messiah or deliverer, or the anointed one. And Jesus, that's why I don't refer to him as Jesus Christ usually, except if I'm talking about Christian theology, because his real name, that's not a name, that's a title. Jesus of Nazareth is a little bit more PC for Jews and Muslims. No, Matthew, he does not. Why King Herod wants to kill all the infants right after Jesus was born? According to the story, Herod was worried about this new king of the Jews overthrowing him. His power was always in a precarious position because the Romans oversaw everything and were the only ones who allowed Herod to rule anything in Judea. You should read Bart Ehrman's works, as he really knows that Jesus being viewed as a prophet viewed quite well. Isaac Newton also did the same. Most early Christians did not. Isaac Newton comes from the 1600s, so he's not an early Christian. Isaac Newton did believe in the Christian Trinity, and Bart Ehrman, I know Bart Ehrman's work and stuff like that, and that is not true. A lot of early Christians believe that he was divine. There are different Christian offshoots and sects and cults that don't believe that he's divine, some of whom Muhammad encountered, and that's what led to misunderstandings about the Christian Trinity in Islam. But yeah. Lila, you got it. I believe I'm pronouncing it right. Thank you. You subscribed. I really appreciate it. Do you think World War III is really going to happen this summer? No. It'll be World War IV, and no, it's not going to happen. John Jay is a great one. What's your proof God exists, and do you believe 9-year-olds should marry? No, I don't believe 9-year-olds should marry. I don't believe that the actions of any religious group prove that God doesn't exist or anything. In fact, if there is a God that is good and all of the stuff, all good and everything, then you need that in order, because otherwise, you just have human beings doing evil for no reason. So that's one of the reasons I say I sleep better believing in some sort of omnipotent higher power. I'm not going to say who I think that is. I think you're a Christian. I won't push too far on a religion debate since this is more history, but do you believe in the Bible to be preserved from a historical perspective especially? I believe that the Bible contains historical accounts that are generally reliable. I have not said that that means every single thing the Bible claims, especially theologically, is true. And it's funny, you're saying that while other people are saying I'm a Muslim, so that must mean I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, I could be a Muslim for all you know. So my defense of Jesus not going to India has nothing to do with what I think about his divinity. That's just a historical argument. And the early Christians did, and my understanding of what the Bible says, especially the New Testament, and the earliest Christian leaders, is that they believed in a divine Christ. And it's hard, you can't get away from that. That's a historical perspective. Is it true? I'm not going to say yes or no. I'm going to let you figure that out. So, is Allah Yahweh? You mean, is the God of Islam the same as the God of Judaism? That's a religious question. I can't answer that. Islam has one of Islam's biggest cult. I can tell you the history. One of Islam's biggest claims to fame is that is the completion of Judaism and Christianity, and that Allah is Yahweh, is Jesus. They're all the same. Can I ask about the most well-organized, or not Jesus, I shouldn't say Jesus, because the Muslims don't believe Jesus to be divine, that Yahweh in Allah are the Christian God. Can I ask about the most well-organized battle ever in history in your opinion? Ooh, organized, very organized battles. Some battles are not very organized, like Napoleon destroying all of his equipment at Austerlitz, just to prove a point. I think... because I think Gettysburg is extremely organized. You got 3 days of fighting. You got two sides. You got charges and advances. So, thank you, Addo. Who's the founding father who had his children as slaves, but all of his fams think he is perfect and blame anyone but them? I think it's Jefferson. Personally, I'm very biased against John Adams because of his Sedition Act. I agree with you. I think John Adams was a bad president, but he's a great guy. He was based. I mean, he was anti-slavery. He never owned a slave. Yeah, John Adams was not a good president, but he's not my least favorite founding father. Why do you waste your time with the Jesus religion stuff? Because I'm a historian, I'm a social scientist, I focus on what's important in history, and I'm a Westerner, and I'm a Western historian, so I can't get away from Christianity and understanding and discussing it. History is written by the victors, actions speak louder. Yes, that's true. What do the non-Muslim sources say on the early Muslims completely conquering the Persian Empire and much of the Roman Empire? I don't know what the non-Muslim sources say. I mean, I think the Christians see that as a huge loss. That would be the non-Muslim sources. Yeah, it's true, Bell. What's your favorite conspiracy? I like Hollow Earth or Giants. Those stuff is kind of cool. Isaac Newton was not a Trinitarian Christian. He explicitly says this. He's written works on why the Trinity was a later belief developed due to biblical corruption. Okay. There you go. So what? I was wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you are the friendly neighborhood historian. No, you can be the friendly neighborhood historian if you like and subscribe, but I'm just delivering it to you, hopefully in a friendly, neighborly manner. I'm not. I'm not worried about Pope Francis's death. Do you think the Rizzler is Jesus reborn? What if? What if? Let me see. Herod never killed babies. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. Yeah, interesting. The born again Armenian is doing a live stream right now and debating Islam. Don't leave there just to go to that. I've got to wrap this up. I didn't believe Jesus visited India, but his disciples did. Some of them in India. There's a rumor that St. Thomas, I think, went to India. In ancient Egypt, was a child more responsible than today's children, like they grew up a lot faster and smarter? Yeah, but they also were able to do leisure time and play with fair animals. Most families kept dogs and cats. Drinking beer was a common habit because the water wasn't clean. I mean, there's a lot of fun stuff they did. Thank you, David. I really appreciate it. What do you think about pushing LGBT agenda on kids? Children need to learn, and they're going to learn anyways, that there are people who have different sexual lifestyles than a mother and a father if they're in that kind of a situation. That's not the same as learn, and that's perfectly normal. I think that it's a tough one because there's obviously the need to learn about what is about culturally relevant and historically relevant movements, and I'll be talking about the LGBTQIA plus movement tomorrow during my lecture on June histories. Please join us 4 p.m. Eastern, and that I'll be talking about that. But how young children find out about this, that's all up to the parents, and children themselves might be LGBTQ, so you got to be careful about that as well. Nobody is handling these things with easy subtlety. It's always broad brush, and that creates problems. Stonewall was very organized. That's true, Bale. The Roman Empire had the age of consent at 12. England at one point had at 7. Age of consent has been quite different historically. Yes, and Muhammad had it at 6. Or sorry, 9. Didn't mention that part, though. What do you think about... I already answered that. Some people have great careers, and the presidency is a disaster like John Adams and Jimmy Carter. Absolutely. And in British prime ministers, too. You mean Chester A. Arthur was born in the U.S. or Canada? U.S. I don't know where the rumor is that he came from Canada. Christos has another definition, literary itinerary reviewed in Revelation 8. Put drugs in your eyes so you can see me. Medea was the first Christ. Christian is a verb. Huh? What? Evan, hi. You've just joined us, and I've just seen your comment just in time to wrap everything up. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to answer. And Amazon, he was the best dressed president. Virgin Oak, hello. I'm just going through the chat trying to catch up. Okay, almost there. We're going to go about 2 more minutes, and then I'll be caught up to the chat. Fathers were Masons. Some of them were, but some of them were Christians, and some of them were deists. It really doesn't matter what religion they were. Have you heard of the one in Shingo, Japan, of all places? It's super far away from all the other claimed burial sites. It's interesting. That would be interesting. I got to visit that. Do you really make 2 videos at member choices if you become a Patreon member? Yes. If you join us on Patreon, I will make 2 videos in your honor. If you join us here on YouTube, you get all the early access. You get bonus content. And we're going to be and this week we are going to be doing 3 long-form videos, one Monday, one Wednesday, and one Friday. Monday and Friday is released to the public. Well, we'll do this when we get members. Maybe it's this week. Maybe if you join here. But Wednesdays, I'm going to start giving you guys extra videos, extra lives, super chats, all of that stuff will be part of a membership here on YouTube. And on Patreon, you can access my series on the First Ladies, which I'm wrapping up very soon. Yeah. What is a luxury you could get in the past but can't get now? I think it's marrying young or being able to drink at a younger age. There's all sorts of age restrictions on access to drugs and alcohol now that didn't exist in the ancient world. Why is Muhammad Salah asking you about Islam and your perspective on it? It is odd, you ain't a religious person. See, again, I love this. I'm not religious. I'm a Christian. I'm a Muslim. I'm all of these things. I'm just the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, so you're just going to be happy without knowing what religion I am or what I actually think about that. And I'll tell you what, if you guys all become members and we get in a member chat and stuff like that, then I can tell you more personal details about me, including what religion I am and why, or no religion. You don't know, and I like it that way. Yeah, no, Muhammad married a girl and consummated the marriage at 9. So for him, the age of consent person was 9. Let me see here. Um, Without me, this channel would be dead. We did just fine when you weren't here earlier. Actually, we had more people when you weren't here earlier. Yes, Ozzy, very much so. A great president, bad person. Or great person, bad president. No, no Lamar Jackson edit. Um, that's interesting. He grew his beard in Pakistan. That's fascinating. Um, yes, Evan is the Trump of the chat, by the way. Disciples were teens on the Nyanso was a pubescent boy wearing a synod. I don't know what you mean there. Hard work friendly. Great as usual. You deserve the growth you're putting in the yards. Much love from Australia. Robert, great to have you here. Let me see. Age of puberty upon certain conditions is more logical rather than laying out an age since no one is the same. No, the West figured that out better, but okay. From Dubai, thank you for joining that. Boring people here, yes. Well, Evan, you're not going to be one of the boring people here. Sorry that the people here are boring. And there you go. Okay, so let me see. We're probably going to get like 10 more people now, but I just crashed them out. I do not worship ChatGPT. It's all coming from my head. I do not use ChatGPT. Once in a while, I'll use Grok for a fact check, but not about historical issues. Let me see here. Do you think Mohammed cracked the moon on his flying? No. Evan is like Wilson and Trump, but together thinks he is Jesus and a nut job at the same time. And that is going to be our pinned comment for today. All right, I'm sorry for kind of meandering there. I was just trying to catch up to the chat and get through everything, and we did get it through it. We went 20 minutes over because everybody has such great questions. Meredith, hello. Bale, that isn't him condoning. It's him saying a fact according to Scripture. Doing my best to be as factual as I possibly can here. People claiming you use AI when you're just pulling from your knowledge and the highest compliments. My history professor did that to me, then apologized. Yes, the best compliment I've ever received is you are reading off of the script when I'm not reading off of the script. So thank you for that. I don't know which scripture people are talking about. Don't know if the West figured it out, but Islam had it on. The age of puberty being upon certain conditions. The age of consent is about 18 in most Western countries. There you go. What if the pyramids were built by regular primitive tech because they had more time on their hands? Could be. Yeah, I mean, and you can just force your people to do that for very little food or else they die. So, why the Russian Empire was behind for so long. Mongol conquest set them back behind the rest of the Europeans. Go check out my videos. I do short videos every day on this channel, and some of them are about, I do a Russian history, I'm doing a Russian history series recently. You can check out my long-form content, including my most recent video where I assess the Russian czars, which I really enjoyed, and on the 14th Amendment that I released yesterday. And if we get some members here, we'll do a third video on Wednesdays just for members only. I'm really looking forward to that. Join here on Patreon. You have social medias in the chat. Hearts one more time. Follow me on Instagram, X. We will be, we will add, I'll put the, make sure to follow me on TikTok. It's on my YouTube post. Vote, by the way, for tomorrow's live stream topic on the YouTube channel. And the TikTok, you can follow me by using that QR code there. And Hearts will hopefully be able to start putting those in the chat. But there's the Instagram, there's the X, Patreon. Can you do the Substack where you can read my articles as well? So, and we are going to do a Discord. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll probably be streaming just talking about history stuff with you guys. So I don't know how Discord and Twitch works, so I'm going to have to do some research there. But a really good friend of mine, his wife is an extremely good streamer, so I'll get some tips from her. Is the calorie issue that would take very well? Yes, got to have a calorie regimen for that. Yes, thank you, Rando. I appreciate you clarifying something that everybody else needs to learn. Me saying that Christians believe Jesus is God and always have been is not me saying that I believe Jesus is God, or vice versa. Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you, Rando. Thank you, Hunt Anything for a Buck. I love a channel, bro. I will be a part of everything you do. You are so kind. Join us on Instagram. Join us on X, on Substack to read the articles, all that great stuff. I can test if you're a Christian. Yes, go ahead and test me. Why y'all be racist? Are you smart? Why ain't white racist then? Jamarcus, I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then there's also the Substack where you can follow us. That's the guy's name, was Jamarcus. What's an educated explanation of why World War One started? That'll be my last question. I need the Substack though. BH, great question. That's my last question I'm going to answer. It started because the Germans, the Austro-Hungarian heir to the throne, Franz Ferdinand, was killed on June 28th. I do daily history videos. He died June 28th, 1914, killed by a Serbian nationalist. The Austrian, he was killed in Bosnia. The Austrians attacked the Serbians. The Russians defended the Serbians. The only reasons the Austro-Hungarians attacked the Serbians was because Germany promised to attack the Russians. Germany attacked France, Russia's ally, and invaded Belgium, which brought Britain in to help the French and the Belgians against the Germans in the west, while the Germans attacked the Russians in the east. There you go. That's it. That's everything. Yes. I asked you once if a Noah's flood is real. You said it was a belief to rationalize the oceans being full of water. It came from ideological reasoning rather than literal flood. So I never said if it was real or not. I never said that doesn't discount, but it could have been a literal flood or not. So Mohammed, you actually just contradicted yourself there. I never said I had belief in that. So all right. Anyways, great question. I hope you guys, Hars, thank you for holding on. I know it was crazy. And Harry, you held on yesterday, so really appreciate that. And Hars, don't crash out. Just go and relax and enjoy your weekends. I will see you all tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Go vote in that poll. Figure out what we are going to be talking about tomorrow. And if this is your first time, welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Take care. Have a great day.